I am Michael Kourosh. I live in Santa Barbara, California, one of the most beautiful places on earth. My design center is where people come to reimagine their homes and spaces. I work with the best designers, clients with broad tastes, and experts who navigate the fascinating world of design. I'm always excited to learn something new, and I never say no to a challenge. This is Design Santa Barbara. Welcome to Design Santa Barbara. I'm Michael Kourosh, and today we are in Santa Barbara Design Center, where we are about to explore a story 3,400 years in the making. Join me as we learn about King Tutankhamun, his life and times, and the discovery of his tomb just over 1 century ago. So much emphasis is put on the discovery of tomb of Tutankhamun, but first let's explore the man and the time he lived in. Tutankhamun was a pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt. He ascended to the throne around the age of 9 and reigned until his death around the age of 19. The most significant actions of his reign were reversing the changes enacted by his predecessor Akhenaten during the Amarna period. He restored the traditional polytheistic form of ancient Egyptian religion, undoing the religious shift known as Atenism, and moved the royal court away from Akhenaten's capital, Amarna. Also, Tutankhamun was one of the few kings worshipped as a deity during his lifetime, as this was usually done posthumously for most pharaohs. Tutankhamun acquired kingship during a tumultuous time period. Akhenaten's Athenism had engendered nationwide destabilization, and after his death, a series of brief reigns further plunged the nation into chaos. Tutankhamun inherited the throne and expounded the reversal of Athenism, which involved extensive reconstruction and the reconsecration of traditional cults and clergymen, as evidenced most eminently by the artifact known as the Restoration Stela. During this time, the traditional cult of the god Amun was established, and king subsequently retitled himself from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun. In accordance with this, his wife also retitled herself from Ankhsepaten to Ankhsenamun. Following Tutankhamun's untimely death after a decade reign, his vizier and perhaps grand uncle Ai assumed the throne, likely marrying Ankhsenamun despite Tutankhamun's general Horemheb being designated by Tutankhamun as heir. Ai's reign was abruptly short, and Horemheb became pharaoh next, also possibly briefly marrying Ankhsenamun until her untimely death a couple of years into Horemheb's lengthy reign. Horemheb was able to secure the throne due to death of Ai's designated heir, Nakhtemon, toward the end of Ai's reign. It was Horemheb who saw it that the restoration of the traditional ancient Egypt religion was completed, restabilizing the nation. In due course, Horemheb had selected then civilian military officer Ramses I as heir to the throne, who already had a grandson, Ramses II, who would then go on to become the third pharaoh of the 19th dynasty, garnering recognition today as the ancient Egypt's greatest pharaoh. Now let's learn how the tomb of Tutankhamun came to be. After only a decade on the throne, at the age of 19, King Tutankhamun succumbed to a wide range of lifelong health issues. This may have been exacerbated by a broken leg and a case of malaria. Upon his death, his remains were mummified and placed in an ornate, multi-layered sarcophagus. His tomb was commissioned and built during his lifetime and under his eye to ensure it was an acceptable place for him to spend his afterlife. The tomb consists of 4 chambers and an entrance, staircase, and corridor. Like other pharaohs, Tutankhamun was buried with a wide variety of funerary objects and personal possessions, such as coffins, furniture, clothing, and jewelry. Robbers entered the tomb twice in the years immediately following the burial, but Tutankhamun's mummy and most of the burial goods remained intact. The tomb's low position, dug into the floor of the valley, allowed its entrance to be hidden by debris deposited by flooding and tomb construction. Thus, unlike other tombs in the valley, it was not stripped of its valuables during the third intermediate period. This is what the unbroken seal securing the doors of the third shrine of the tomb looked like. The seal remained this way for 3,300 years. When we come back, we will explore the event 100 years ago that changed the face of modern archaeology and ignited a worldwide craze over ancient Egypt. Stay tuned. There is more Design Santa Barbara after the break. Today we are with Miss Sherry Bagai from Sherry B Design, and she's our in-house window and drapery specialist. So, Miss Sherry, viewers had a question as why should they actually use window coverings in their home where they can have it free and open and everybody can, God knows, look in and they can look out. Could you explain?
There are many reasons, obviously, but I'm going to give you 6 important reasons that why having window coverings in the house is beneficial to you. Number 1 is the style. You know, with adding window coverings, you can make a room look formal, informal, contemporary. You can definitely bring a style and a warmth to the room. Second one, probably, I think the most important would be privacy. We all want to have privacy inside the house, so honeycomb shades are perfect. They would let the light in, but nobody can see inside and outside. I think the third most important reason would be the light that comes through. If you don't have any window coverings, your wood floor can get faded, your area rugs can get affected by the lights. The next important one would be the energy cost.
Yes.
With the window covering, you can make the room cooler, warmer, and definitely helps you with keeping the cost of your electricity and gas low. Last but not least would be how much value it would add to your home. If you're thinking about selling your home, definitely the right window covering, window treatment makes your home more elegant and more desirable.
More representative.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with all of them. And I highly recommend you, if you're looking for window coverings, come see Sherry B at Santa Barbara Design Center and get the right and proper window covering and add to your home and make your life happier.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Welcome back to Design Santa Barbara as we explore the fascinating history of King Tutankhamun and the discovery of his tomb 100 years ago. The archaeologist and Egyptologist Howard Carter was born in England in the 1870s to an artist and printer named Samuel John Carter. Trained by his father and noted for his ability to easily draw duplicates of what he saw, Carter became enamored with Egypt after seeing a collection at a nearby manor. In 1891, at the age of 17, Carter arrived in Egypt and immediately gained a reputation for his ability to copy hieroglyphs from tomb decorations. After working his way up the ranks and serving as overseer of numerous excavations throughout Egypt, Carter was commissioned by Lord Carnarvon to study tombs of nobility. By 1917, Carnarvon and Carter had received permission to excavate in the Valley of the Kings. By 1922, Lord Carnarvon had become dissatisfied with the lack of results after several years of finding little. After considering withdrawing his funding, Carnarvon agreed after a discussion with Carter that he would fund one more season of work in the Valley of the Kings. Carter returned to Egypt and investigated a line of huts that he had abandoned a few seasons earlier. The crew cleared the huts and rock debris beneath. On 4th of November 1922, their young water boy accidentally stumbled on a stone that turned out to be the top of a flight of steps cut into the bedrock. Carter had the steps partially dug out until the top of a mud-plastered doorway was found. The doorway was stamped with indistinct cartouches. Carter ordered the staircase to be refilled and sent a telegram to Carnarvon, who arrived from England 2.5 weeks later on November 23rd, accompanied by his daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert. On 24th of November 1922, the full extent of the staircase was cleared and a seal containing Tutankhamun's cartouche found on the outer doorway. This door was removed and the rubble-filled corridor behind cleared, revealing the door of the tomb itself. On 26th of November, Carter with Carnarvon, Lady Evelyn, and assistant Arthur Callender in attendance made a tiny breach in the top left-hand corner of the doorway, using a chisel that his grandmother had given him for his 17th birthday. He was able to peer in by the light of a candle and see that many of the gold and ebony treasures were still in place. He did not know yet whether it was a tomb or merely an old cache, but he did see a promising sealed doorway between the two sentinel statues. Carnarvon asked, "Can you see anything?" Carter replied, "Yes, wonderful things." Carter had in fact discovered Tutankhamun's tomb. The tomb was then secured to be entered in the presence of an official of the Egyptian Department of Antiquities the next day. However, that night, Carter, Carnarvon, Lady Evelyn, and Callender apparently made an unauthorized visit, becoming the first people in modern times to enter the tomb. Some sources suggest that the group also entered the inner burial chamber. In this account, a small hole was found in the chamber's sealed doorway, and Carter, Carnarvon, and Lady Evelyn crawled through. The next morning, 27th of November, saw an inspection of the tomb in the presence of an Egyptian official. Callender rigged up electric lighting, illuminating a vast hall of items, including gilded couches, chests, thrones, and shrines. They also saw evidence of two further chambers, including the sealed doorway to the inner burial chamber, guarded by the two life-size statues of Tutankhamun. In spite of evidence of break-ins in ancient times, the tomb was virtually intact and would ultimately be found to contain over 5,000 items. On November 29th, the tomb was officially opened in the presence of a number of invited dignitaries and Egyptian officials. Realizing the size and the scope of the task ahead, Carter sought help from the Metropolitan Museum's excavation team working nearby, who readily agreed to lend a number of their staff, including Arthur Mace and archaeological photographer Harry Burton, while the Egyptian government loaned analytical chemist Alfred Lucas. The next several months were spent cataloging and conserving the contents of the antechamber under the supervision of the Department of Antiquities. On the 16th of February 1923, Carter opened the sealed doorway and confirmed it led to a burial chamber containing the sarcophagus of Tutankhamun. The tomb was considered the best preserved and most intact pharaonic tomb ever found in the Valley of the Kings, and the discovery was eagerly covered by the world's press. However, much to the annoyance of other newspapers, Lord Carnarvon sold exclusive reporting rights to the Times. Only Arthur Merton of that paper was allowed on the scene, and his vivid descriptions helped to establish Carter's reputation with the British public. As the world discovered the tomb and its treasures, a revival of ancient Egyptian style swept the world. Because his name was hard to pronounce, many began to call him King Tut. Egyptian architecture began to pop up around the world. Jewelry inspired by what was found in the tomb became haute couture, and even Hollywood got in on the frenzy. Today we are with Jess, the owner and creative director of Just LED at the Santa Barbara Design Center, and he's a marvel of lighting. So I understand there is a new recessed lighting that replaces the old clunky big ones, is more ergodynamic, and you carry these. Can you explain to our viewers what this is all about and what kind of benefits they get out of it?
Yes, Michael. Traditionally, 6-inch and 4-inch has been the standard across America. The big clunky trims on the ceiling, you'll see them all over America. Since LED has come to another level on recessed fixtures, and as a designer, we like to see tight little go-away trims that you don't see, they're up in the ceiling. So we have trims that are 3.5 inches that go, the light sits up in the ceiling, so when you walk in it doesn't hit you in the face like the 6 and 4-inch traditional cans used to do. They also dim warm, so it's like the old traditional dimming. Everyone loves LED dimming to the way halogens used to. It's called warm dim, so they dim down nice and warmly. So, and it's all set above the ceiling and it's all optical, sending shafts of light through the room, creating a great mood in the room.
Well, that's very nice, and I have seen it actually in your showroom. Come down here and see what he has to offer and make your house beautiful and warm. Thank you very much.
No problem.
A few seasons ago, we welcomed archaeologist Nick Brown into the show to talk about what it's like to work on a dig in Egypt and Howard Carter's legacy. Let's look back at some of that interview. Welcome back. This week we are speaking with the archaeologist, Egyptologist, and historian Nick Brown. Nick, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I have more questions.
Yeah,
It's been an exciting show with you in it. What fascinates you about Egyptian history?
Yeah, there's a ton of different things that fascinate me about ancient Egyptian history. You know, it's really great as an archaeologist and a scholar to have an ancient civilization that was around essentially for 5,000 years with pretty much uninterrupted history and culture and societal norms and stuff. So I have basically this long span of time that I can really study human behavior and societal development, if you will, over a period of time. And it's great, you know, as an archaeologist and historian to look to our past and to study history to then better understand where we are today and where we potentially are going in the future. And so there's essentially this kind of long duration, if you will, of human existence. And the people back then certainly were acting like we are today. And I think this is another aspect of Egyptian history that I love so much. You know, when you study these ancient people and you really get into what they were writing down and what they were talking about and how they were living their lives from the archaeological remains, what you find is they're feeling the same emotions we are. They're having the same kind of bickering arguments with their neighbors like we do. They have the same hopes and fears for their families. So it's pretty amazing to look back, you know, some 3,000-4,000 years ago and see that the people were just like us. So it's almost like you could take a character from ancient Egypt and put them into our society today and they'd fit in just fine.
So wonderful. It is,
Yeah.
we are wherever we go, we are all the same, despite a lot of people think they're all different. Even
Yeah.
back then, they were the same as they are today.
Exactly. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Is there a particular location in Egypt that interests you more than the rest?
So I am really fascinated with the Valley of the Kings. And this is one of my favorite sites in Egypt and one of my favorite places to study. This essentially is a cemetery for the pharaohs during the New Kingdom. So this is roughly 1500 BC to 1000 BC is when this necropolis or this area...
Just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Just not too long ago. But essentially this necropolis is really fascinating because it's a series of tombs that were built for kings of the New Kingdom. And what's interesting is it had such a dynamic life during its use as a royal necropolis, but then it has this really interesting afterlife, if you will, after the New Kingdom period when Egypt experiences this political and social crisis or instability to the point where several tombs and people's homes were being robbed, and there was rampant looting, and there was even state-sanctioned looting of older tombs as well. Their economic crisis was so severe, they were like, you know what, we've got to go into these tombs, we've got to mine them for all their golden treasure, and we've got to recirculate that into the economy. And so this site, the Valley of the Kings, it's just really fascinating to, when you really get into it and look at the history and the stories that were happening there, you realize it was a really dynamic landscape that had a ton of human interaction in it for, you know, close to 1,000 years. So
wow, I study
Yeah.
history quite a lot, but that's the very first time I hear that the new pharaohs go rob the old pharaohs' tombs.
yeah.
Wow, that's
To us, it seems, you know, kind of like sacrilegious maybe for the Egyptians, or like something that would be unheard of, but we have the archaeological evidence, we have papyri and documents that talk about all this looting and theft, yeah, and even we have a few royal caches or kind of secret hiding spots for the mummies and the coffins of these older kings, that after they were stripped of all their gold jewelry and golden coffins and everything, they were kind of rewrapped, placed into new kind of, or new coffins, and placed within these secret hiding caches. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty
That's
amazing.
very interesting. That's amazing. Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Ancient Egypt has been of great focus since Howard Carter and his team made their discovery in 1922.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and how it affects the modern worldview of Egyptian culture?
Yeah, totally. So we're, I think in Egyptology, and for those of us who are interested in ancient Egypt, we're at a very exciting moment in time right now, because next year is the 100-year anniversary, or the centennial of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. And this was a nearly intact tomb that Howard Carter and his financier, Lord Carnarvon, discovered in the Valley of the Kings in November of 1922. And really before it and since, there hasn't been any kind of archaeological discovery quite like it. I mean, the tomb was nearly intact, all kinds of, you know, not only golden treasure and golden jewelry, but many different kinds of daily life objects that the king would have used. We even have like his pairs of underwear, for instance, or the toys he played with as a kid. So really a number of fascinating and interesting artifacts to study and really look at from this tomb. And, you know, as this tomb was being excavated and these objects were being brought out, the discovery of this tomb really fueled a new fascination with ancient Egypt and definitely caught the public's interest. Tutankhamun and his golden mask is such an icon of ancient Egypt, if really not the ancient world. Most people, I think, would recognize it if they saw a photo of it. And it's still, you know, him as a ruler, his tomb as an archaeological discovery, it still really captivates us and catches our imagination and gets us to really be in awe and, you know, admiration of the ancient Egyptians.
Yeah, that's amazing, actually. There was actually a few years ago, they brought it to LACMA, and we went there to get a tour out of it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't bring most important items, but they brought a few that you can look into. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And even the objects from that tomb, like the ones that came to LACMA, for instance, that you think are maybe more simplistic or not, you know, as flashy as like the golden mask or anything, they still just have such an artistic value and just such an amazing capability of just capturing your interest and your attention.
It gives you goosebumps,
Yeah.
really it does. If you look at them and it's
Yeah,
just like...
exactly. And then, you know, when you are able to put it in perspective of how old these items are, these artifacts are, you know, thousands of years ago, somebody was painting this bust or, you know, making this chair or whatever. And then here we are, you know, in the early 2000s, getting to look at it in Los Angeles, half a world away. It's just something else.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
International fascination with Egypt continues to this day. At the world's most famous museum, the Louvre in Paris, the Egyptian collection is a wonder to behold. Let's look at some of its treasures. I hope you have enjoyed this look into King Tutankhamun, the times that he lived in, the legacy of his tomb, and its discovery, and the century of fascination that the world has had with ancient Egypt since its discovery. So I would like to show you a textile from ancient Egypt related to our show today. Is a Coptic textile, is roughly 6th century AD, so that is roughly 1500 years old. These are wall hangings they used to have, and these are the first Christians in Egypt, and you can see clearly they have the cross, and that's a Coptic cross. It is hand woven, and the technique is quite similar to the old textiles we find. You go back like 10,000 years, they use the same technique to do it. This one is on a linen background. They wove that linen first, and then if you can see carefully, there is a tiny little pile of the linen down there. But more importantly, they took the wool and they dyed it, and they created that knotted pile. It is very similar to what they do today. So it was made 1500 years ago. You think about it, it's mind-blowing, and it survived. Top of that, I want to show you something very precious. Got a piece of linen, and this is one of the finest textiles I have ever seen, and this is roughly 4,500 years old. It's mind-blowing. You think about it. When we have a building in our town, beautiful Santa Barbara, is 100 years old. They call it historic and landmark, where this is 4,500 years old. It's a different complete universe. I assume this was either a high-ranking person or maybe even Pharaoh's clothing, because finest like that. You see, this is what ordinary people make. You can put it right next to it and you can see the linen. This is a fine work actually, because it was religious and was wall hanging. But look at this. This is easily 10 times finer. It's a beautiful piece. I have it for your viewing. If you ever come here, look at it. It just holding something 4,500 years on your hand is tremendous. Thank you for watching Design Santa Barbara. Looking forward to see you next week.